One of them is the team that just watched a 38-year-old man rewrite history. The other is the team that came back from the dead against the Dutch and made a World Cup giant flinch. And somewhere in the back half of this tournament, if the bracket bends the right way, they could meet. The defending champions of the world against the most dangerous dark horse football has produced in a generation. Argentina against Japan, the kings against the giant killers. And the question is simpler than it sounds and harder than it looks. Who would actually win? In this video, we are going to break that exact collision down piece by piece. The two systems, the two stars, the midfield war that would decide everything, the one player Japan have no answer for, and the one weakness in Argentina that Japan are built almost perfectly to punish. And by the end, we are going to give you a verdict and a scoreline, because that is the whole point of asking the question in the first place. These two nations have almost no history with each other on this stage. They have crossed paths only a handful of times, and only in friendlies, never once in a World Cup match that mattered. There is no tactical book written in blood from a previous knockout heartbreak. Whatever happens between them would be brand new, which removes the one thing that sometimes drags a favorite over the line: familiarity. Neither of these teams truly knows the other in the only environment that counts. But before we get to who wins, you need to understand where both of these teams actually are right now. Because the version of Argentina and the version of Japan walking around this World Cup are not the versions you remember from 4 years ago. Let us start with the champions. Argentina arrived at this tournament carrying something no other nation is carrying: a target. They are the holders, the team everyone measures themselves against, and for a while there was a quiet question hanging over them. The same question that follows every champion into the next cycle. Was it luck, or were they just that good? 2 games in, they answered it. Against Algeria in the opener, they were ruthless. 3 goals, no reply, and Lionel Messi walking off with the match ball after a hat trick that turned the clock back 10 years. Against Austria, it was uglier, tighter, more uncomfortable. Ralf Rangnick sent his team out to press Argentina into mistakes, and for long stretches it worked. Argentina got pinned in. They got pushed back. They got made to suffer. And then the suffering stopped mattering because Messi scored the goal that broke the oldest record in the sport. 17 World Cup goals. Then 18. More than Miroslav Klose. More than anyone who has ever played the men's tournament. He missed a penalty in that same match, sent it wide in the 6th minute, and it did not matter at all, because by the end he had scored twice, including a clinical finish on the counter deep into stoppage time. 6 consecutive World Cup matches with a goal now, a streak only. Just Fontaine and Jairzinho had ever touched, at 38 years old, in his 6th World Cup. Scaloni was asked about him afterward and admitted he is running out of words. He pointed out that when the team was drowning without the ball, it was Messi who dropped in, won possession back, and dragged them out. That is the part people miss. This is not a passenger being carried to one last dance. This is the hardest working player on the pitch who also happens to be the best one. So that is the headline. But a champion is never one man, and Argentina know it. Behind Messi sits one of the most complete spines in world football. In goal, Emiliano Martinez. Dibu, the man who has turned penalty shootouts into a personal art form, who got into the heads of the French in the 2022 final and never let go. In front of him, a back line built like a wall, with Cristian Romero and Lisandro Martinez in the middle, snarling, aggressive, comfortable on the ball, and even more comfortable putting someone on the floor. In midfield, an engine room that won the last World Cup, and most of them have only gotten better since. Enzo Fernandez running the tempo, Alexis Mac Allister gliding between lines. Rodrigo de Paul doing the dirty work nobody applauds. And in attack, options most nations would build an entire team around. Lautaro Martínez, Julián Álvarez off the bench, Thiago Almada, Nicolas Gonzalez, Giuliano Simeone with the kind of pace that punishes tired legs. And here is the thing that makes this Argentina so hard to beat. They have learned how to win without the ball. Against Austria, they did not dominate possession the way you expect from a Scaloni team. They sat, they absorbed. They limited a team that pressed them all night to a single shot on target. They suffocated the game, controlled the chaos, and then killed it on the counter. 2 clean sheets in 2 matches. That is not a team that beats you with flair. That is a team that beats you with control and then hits you with a genius. That is the wall Japan would have to climb. And 4 years ago, you would have laughed at the idea that they could. You should not laugh anymore. Because while Argentina were collecting their trophy, Japan were quietly building something nobody outside of Asia took seriously until it started eating giants alive. For decades, the story of Japanese football was the same story. Disciplined, organized, technically neat, brave for 45 minutes and then overwhelmed. The plucky underdog who turns up, makes the big nations sweat, and goes home in the group stage with a moral victory and a polite round of applause. That was the ceiling. Everybody accepted it, including, for a long time, Japan. Then the ceiling broke. You can trace the shift back to the technical revolution that has been brewing in Japanese football for years. The patient investment in coaching and youth, and the kind of one-touch passing culture that players like Andres Iniesta saw up close when they went to play there and came away genuinely stunned by the quality. The seeds were planted years ago. The harvest is happening now, and it is not subtle. At the 2022 World Cup, Japan beat Germany. Then they beat Spain. 2 of the most decorated football nations on earth, dismantled by a team that pressed them into oblivion and countered through them at lightning speed. They only went out in the round of 16, and only on penalties to Croatia, a team that would go on to finish 3rd. Since then, the resume has only grown. They beat Germany again, 4-1 in Germany. And in late 2025, they did something they had failed to do in 14 previous attempts across the whole history of the fixture. They beat Brazil. Came from 2 goals down to win it 3-2. The first time Japan had ever beaten the Selecao. This is no longer a team that hopes to escape its group. This is a team whose captain, Wataru Endo, stood up after they qualified first among every nation on the planet and told his country it was time to start talking about lifting the trophy. The manager, Hajime Moriyasu, has spent years insisting they be treated as dark horses, not underdogs. There is a difference. An underdog hopes. A dark horse plans. And in this tournament, the plan is already in motion. They opened against the Netherlands and walked straight into a nightmare. 2 goals down, outplayed for an hour, the kind of position that used to break old Japan. This Japan refused to die. They pulled one back, kept coming, kept believing, and in the 89th minute they ripped the equalizer out of the Dutch and took a point nobody thought they would get. Then they turned around and dismantled Tunisia 4-0. They walk into their final group match needing only a draw against Sweden to go through, and the numbers favor them to do exactly that. But you cannot talk about this Japan without talking about the hole in it. Because the squad that flew to North America is missing. The player most people would have called their best. Kaoru Mitoma is not here. A hamstring injury picked up at Brighton in the run-in tore the heart out of the left side of Japan's attack, and there is no like-for-like replacement on earth for what he does. Takumi Minamino, their top scorer through qualifying, is gone too. His knee surgically rebuilt and out of time. On paper, that should have ended the dream before it started. It did not. And the reason it did not tells you everything about why this team is dangerous. Because Moriyasu does not build around one man. He builds around movement. The attack is a rotating, interchanging swarm, and when one piece falls out, the others simply absorb the space. Takefusa Kubo has stepped into the creative hub. a La Masia product who learned the game in the same academy that built half of Spain's golden generation. A player who can drift inside, slip a pass through the eye of a needle, or drive at a backline until it cracks. Ritsu Doan brings goals and end product from the right. Junya Ito brings raw, frightening pace and crosses that hang in exactly the wrong place for defenders. Ayase Ueda leads the line, a striker who just finished as the top scorer in the Dutch league. All movement and aerial threat and the kind of cold finishing that turns half chances into goals. And underneath all of it sits the engine. Daichi Kamada pulling strings between the lines. Ao Tanaka covering ground box to box. Kaishu Sano breaking up play before it becomes danger. And Endo himself, the captain, anchoring it all from the base, reading the game 2 seconds before anyone else on the pitch, the man Liverpool trust to protect their back four in the most demanding league in the world. So that is the matchup on paper. The most decorated active footballer ever, backed by a world champion spine, against the most fearless giant killer in the sport. A team that has made a habit out of humiliating exactly the kind of opponent Argentina represents. Now, let us put them on the same field and figure out what actually happens. The first battle, the one that decides almost everything, is the midfield. Whoever controls those 40 yards in the center controls the rhythm of the entire match. Argentina want to slow it down, dictate, make you chase shadows until you are exhausted and then punish you. Japan want the exact opposite. They want it fast, vertical, chaotic, a game of transitions where the ball is turned over high up the pitch and bodies are flooding forward before the opponent can reset. This is the heart of the whole question. Because Argentina's midfield, Enzo and Mac Allister and DePaul, is built to win a controlled technical game. They are comfortable in possession, they recycle the ball beautifully, and they rarely give it away cheaply. But Japan's entire identity is built on making the controlled game impossible. Their press is not the desperate, lung-busting press of a lesser side. It is coordinated. It is a trap. They funnel you toward the touchline, they swarm, and they win the ball in the exact areas where winning it hurts the most. They did it to Germany. They did it to Spain. They did it to Brazil. Argentina would be walking into the same gauntlet. But here is the counter, and it is a big one. Argentina have something those other teams did not have. They have a release valve named Lionel Messi, who can take one touch under pressure, in a phone box, surrounded by 3 defenders, and bend the entire shape of the game with a single pass. The whole point of a high press is to trap the opponent before they can find a clean outlet. Argentina's outlet is a man who has spent 20 years escaping traps. When Japan press, Messi drops, receives, and either splits them open or wins the foul that lets Argentina reset. That is the firewall. That is the thing that makes pressing Argentina genuinely terrifying. Because if you miss, the punishment arrives in under 5 seconds. So the midfield is close to even. Japan's collective system against Argentina's individual escape hatch. And it is worth sitting with that contrast for a second, because it is the entire game in miniature. Japan are a team, a beautifully coordinated 11-piece machine where every press is rehearsed and every trap is sprung in unison. Argentina, for all their structure, have a final layer that no system can replicate, a player who turns a broken moment into a goal. When 2 philosophies like that collide, it usually comes down to which one cracks first. Does Japan's machine win the ball back often enough to overwhelm the champions before the genius can intervene? Or does the genius find one clean touch and make the whole machine irrelevant? That is the question the first half would answer. Which brings us to the wings. And here Japan have a real, tangible edge they would be desperate to exploit. Argentina's fullbacks love to push high. Nahuel Molina on the right is an attacking weapon, and Argentina's whole structure leans forward when they have the ball. That leaves space in behind. And space in behind is exactly where Junya Ito and his pace live. Every time Molina commits forward, Japan have a runner ready to attack the grass he leaves. Kubo drifting into the half space, Endo flying down the outside, Don arriving at the back post. Japan would target those flanks relentlessly because that is the seam in the champion's armor, and Japan are clinical at finding seams. But there is a reason Argentina sits so deep when they need to, and it brings us to the wall in the middle. Cristian Romero and Lautaro Martínez do not get bullied. They step out, they read the runs, they are vicious in the duel and calm on the ball. Ueda would have the fight of his life trying to find a yard of space against those two. And behind them, if anything slips through, is Dibu Martinez, a goalkeeper who saves the unsavable in exactly the moments that matter most. And that is the next layer of this, the part that should make every Japan fan nervous. The deeper this game goes, the more it tilts toward Argentina. Because if Japan cannot find the breakthrough in 90 minutes, if this thing crawls toward extra time and penalties, you are walking directly into the worst possible scenario. You are handing the ball and the shootout to the single most feared penalty goalkeeper of his era. Dibu Martinez in a shootout is not a coin flip. He is a loaded coin. Japan have lived this nightmare before, going out of the last World Cup on penalties to Croatia. Argentina won their entire title partly on the strength of that exact moment. The longer the game, the louder that history gets. So, how does Japan actually win this? Because they can? Make no mistake, they absolutely can. Japan win this game by refusing to let it become the game Argentina want. They win it by pressing from the first whistle, by turning it into a track meet, by making Argentina's older legs cover ground they would rather not cover in the North American heat. They win it through transition, catching the champions in the half second after they lose the ball, before Romero and Lisandro can reset their line. They win it by being clinical with the 2 or 3 chances they will create. Because against Argentina, you do not get 10, you get a handful, and you have to bury them. The Brazil game is the blueprint. 2-0 down, dead and buried, and they pressed and ran and believed their way to a famous win. They have the template, they have the personnel, they have done it to better defended teams than this. If Japan score first and force Argentina to chase the game, to come out of their shell and play on the front foot, that is when the champions are most exposed. And that is exactly the chaos Japan feed on. There is a psychological layer to this too, and it favors Japan more than people realize. Argentina carry the weight of expectation. They are supposed to win. A draw feels like a loss to them. A single goal conceded sets off alarm bells across an entire nation. Japan carry none of that. Every great thing they do is a bonus, every scalp a celebration, and a team playing with house money is a dangerous animal. If Japan land the first blow, the pressure does not split evenly. It crashes down almost entirely on the champions. That is the same dynamic that helped them topple Germany and Spain. The favorite tightens up. The underdog swings free. And Japan have proven, over and over, that they know exactly how to make a giant feel the weight of its own reputation. And how does Argentina win it? They win it the way champions always win it. By being patient. By absorbing Japan's early storm, weathering the press, refusing to panic when they get pinned in, and waiting for the one moment. Because they have the one player who guarantees that moment will come. They win it by being more clinical, by needing fewer chances, by having a Messi free kick or a Lautaro half-yard of space or a Julián Álvarez run off the bench to change everything. They win it on experience, on the fact that this exact group of players has stood in the fire of a World Cup knockout and not blinked. They win it by trusting their structure, by knowing that a single defensive lapse from Japan against this much quality is fatal, and that Japan, for all their courage, do leave gaps when they commit numbers forward. And if all of that fails, if Japan somehow strangle them for 90, they win it in the place where they are unbeatable, from 12 yards. Then there are the X factors, The things that do not show up on a tactics board but decide tournaments anyway. The heat is real. Games in this World Cup have been played in brutal conditions, and that punishes pressing teams hardest of all. Japan's entire game costs energy, and 90 minutes of high-intensity pressing in a North American summer is a tax that comes due in the final 20. That favors Argentina, the team built to conserve and strike. The benches are not even. Argentina can bring Julián Álvarez, a World Cup winner and a striker most countries would build around, off the bench as a luxury. That depth in the final 20 minutes is a weapon Japan, for all their quality, cannot quite match. And the goalkeeper duel might be closer than people think. Zion Suzuki has grown into a genuinely excellent keeper, commanding and brave, sharp off his line, and on the night he could absolutely stand toe-to-toe with anyone. He has the shot stopping to keep Japan in a game they are losing on chances. But Debu is not just a keeper. He is a psychological event. He talks, he stares, he gets inside your head before you have even placed the ball, and he has built an entire reputation on breaking nerves at the exact moment they are most fragile. In open play, the gap between the two is small. In a shootout, that gap is a chasm. So we come to it. The verdict. If these two teams meet once, in a single 90-minute knockout match, here is the honest truth. Argentina are favorites. Not overwhelming favorites, not the kind of favorite where you can put your house on it and go to sleep. But favorites. They have the best player in the history of the sport playing some of the most decisive football of his life. They have a defense that has conceded nothing. They have the experience of having done this exact thing under exactly this pressure and walked away with the trophy. And they have the ultimate insurance policy waiting in goal if the game goes the distance. That is a lot of reasons stacked on one side of the scale. But Japan are not a team you write off. They are the team you fear. They have a system purpose-built to dismantle exactly the kind of opponent Argentina is. They have beaten Germany, Spain, and Brazil with the same approach they would bring to this game. They have a captain who genuinely believes they can win the whole thing, and a squad good enough that the belief is not delusion. On the right night, with an early goal and a little luck, Japan absolutely beat Argentina, and nobody who watched them claw back from the dead against the Dutch would be shocked. The prediction. In a tight, breathless, end-to-end knockout match, Argentina edge it. Something like 2-1. Japan score, Japan make them sweat. Japan force the champions to be champions. And in the end, the difference is the one thing Japan cannot replicate no matter how good their system gets. The difference is the number 10 in white and sky blue. The man who has spent his entire life turning impossible games into Argentine wins, deciding it with a single moment that no tactical plan in the world can fully prepare for. But football does not care about predictions. That is the entire reason we love it. If they ever do meet on this stage, it would be one of the great collisions of the modern World Cup. The kings against the giant killers. Control against chaos. The greatest of all time against the team that has made a career out of toppling the gods of this sport. And honestly, would you really bet against Japan being the team that finally writes the upset nobody saw coming? That is the breakdown. That is the verdict. Now we want to hear yours. Drop your prediction in the comments and tell us who you think takes it and what the scoreline would be. Like and subscribe for more football deep dives just like this, and we will see you in the next one.